We got a solid Bitcoin setup happening and it's unfolding. I'm going to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about right now. We're going to jump straight into it. We already know, right, that Bitcoin has been dipping today. It's been dipping aggressively, just like anticipated. We talked about, in previous videos about Bitcoin finding a bottom at this retracement area, coming back up, trying to find resistance up here. We had a lot of, anticipated news on tariffs unfolding, pushing the price higher, couldn't sustainably hold itself above the descending resistance line. And at that point, we are starting to unfold a little bit more to the downside, right? And we know that tariffs have been unfolding. They're a little bit aggressive. There are some countries trying to loosen up these tariffs and kind of, soften them up a bit, but they are still holding up very, very strong, right? So this on top of a very, not very sustainable, low volume, bullish rallies unfolding during this, uh, you know, weakens the pathway to the upside and the pathway down unfolds a little bit more, right? But we want to know how can we continue from here? How low can we really go? And then also, when can we start finally seeing, 90K plus prices on Bitcoin back up into like, 6 digits eventually, right? And it comes down to understanding that ever since we dipped down from this, high up here in the 100Ks, and we started seeing, tariff fears really weakening the chart quite a bit, we have two things to go off of, right? And actually, like three things. But we have, first of all, we have two deep value dips in Bitcoin below 100K, right? This is very, very similar setup due to what we saw back here, where we saw two dips in deep value into this purple area. Eventually, there was a lot of fear in the broader economic, view for, these risk on assets. And during this time, we also had a lot of retail fear. And, it seemed like doom was around the corner until we had, sustainable price holding above, not trying to go lower than this previous low. And then from there, we started unfold. That's when we had a reversal point where we started unfolding and we started making a higher high and higher low pattern. We could be seeing something like that here forming as well, because we have what seems like fear and doom, or not fear, but doom around the corner. And right now we're trying to see if we can sustainably hold, prices around 80K before we can potentially start working our way higher. But we need to remember that, like I said previously, when we were up here, we were trying to get a third wave up on an overall move. Instead, it failed. We started breaking down lower from supports. We ended up finding solid support at 81.2K. We started pumping up higher. Of course, resistance keeps holding, and now we're trying to, trend a little bit down. So what that means is that not being able to see enough evidence, not being able to see enough sustained rallies within this, we know that bearish momentum is still there, and we can be overly bullish, at least not in the short term, but throughout the rest of the year, we can continue to see higher prices. What we're trying to look for is, we can't really say an inverse head and shoulders too much, because we have shoulder here, head here, and then we have too much choppiness kind of extending quite a bit. It's not super clear, right? So we need to focus on value structures compared to broader economic vibes, right? So quite simply, until we can see a sustained hold, not just breaking above the trend line we have right here, but a sustained hold above it, we can end up, using this as support in the future and then going up higher. But until that happens, and again, a lot of this, fresh tariff headlines are still fresh. It all just happened within the last couple hours, and this can extend a little bit more throughout the rest of this first half of April, right? So what we're trying to look for is, at this moment, we want to see prices maybe have a proper retracement, just a healthy retracement back up into this green area, which can act as resistance before we can potentially start going down lower. But now, you can't let this really influence FOMO, right? We can see if the price rally up overnight, right? We can easily see that happen. It can easily fall from here too, because it's struggling to hold above the 120 moving average. It's struggling a bit. We also saw the RSI didn't bottom out completely too much. So we know that there is still some bearish momentum, right, in the short term. but we can easily see prices trend up into this area right here, show some weakness before coming down lower. This will be a healthy retracement to factor in this aggressive move down. But we know that if we start going down lower, it's very unlikely that we will break below this one. Again, the structure is just too healthy. There's a lot of value in Bitcoin right now due to a lot of that deep value of Bitcoin being bought up by institutions and governments. So we know that the demand is much stronger than supply, but that doesn't mean we can't dip a little bit more. I'm potentially looking at roughly 79K as a very important area to keep an eye on for some strong long accumulation for Bitcoin. So 79 to 80K, very strong area, because this will create a higher low from here. It'll create a reasonable dip to factor in a lot of the broader headlines that we're seeing right now, and it'll be deep value enough to where we don't really want to risk waiting on accumulating Bitcoin, at least in my opinion, below that, because a reversal can happen very quickly, like we saw here. It can happen very quickly. So the moment we hit 80K, especially down into 79K, if this were to happen, we want to be very alert and gain some exposure, right? Because it's just not sustainable below those levels, and it can rally up very quickly. So I want to see prices come down to that area as a very strong next level support. It's not very likely that we're going to see prices come down, in my opinion, into this area. We'll have to see just terrible stuff happen with tariffs, and I believe that really the worst is over, and we're just going to see a little bit of that, aftermath affect the price, bring it down a little bit more. We can see the broader market dip down a little bit more too within the next few trading days, before we can start, potentially see more inflows go into these, risk on assets. And the thing about that too is that we want to keep an eye on not just the DXY, but we want to keep an eye on the VIX, because it's been trending up for a while. It struggled to break, a new high, to dip down these assets a lot more. So we can easily see, a little bit of support being found on the VIX before we can, see prices come down by going up a little bit higher. And then the DXY, we're also seeing, a lot of aggressive dips within this. And this could also support the expectations of Bitcoin not really seeing an aggressive dip below, especially, this previous low right here. I would like to see the price dip down a bit more, retest, the previous retracements, 81.2K, potentially down a little bit more, between 79 and 80K is what I'm personally looking at, in order for me in my own portfolios to open up some new long trades on Bitcoin. And that's what I'm looking for, although I'm looking for a potential resistance up into the descending resistance line, find, weakness in this area before coming back down. Again, it's very tough to say, because the structure is very strong, but a little bit more of a dip is very likely. Again, of course, if this was positive news, we wouldn't have seen this happen. So now we're just seeing the price stabilize a little bit before coming down, and it doesn't have to go here. It can just start, now, but that's what I'm personally looking for. I believe these tariffs are going to provide a very clear, very good setup for all of us to take advantage of some long positions, in my opinion, as we start testing that 80K area once again, to accumulate, and then build up if we tend to go lower, and then a quick recovery afterwards. In my opinion, it's very likely. Now, in order for us, again, to go up and start making a new trend higher, and again, this area, if you guys haven't seen the last video, this area is established basically using the overall low from these structures right here, the overall low, factoring in the high so far, and then the low we recently saw in the last few days. So this will be a healthy area for this to unfold. Now, what we're seeing here as well is, if I can find it, it can be a little bit more of a bigger picture, wave pattern, where we have another chance. We have another chance of seeing a third wave unfold. In this case, more lengthy. In my opinion, a lot more stable if you consider the bigger picture. We do have a pretty clear third wave move up here, finding resistance, fourth wave correction, and then as you can see in this, if I zoom in a little bit more, it does create a 3-wave move. And then, if you factor this in, this move down is actually very much valid. It hit the point, the 1.236 at 83.1K, or 83.1K. And at that point, that's a good enough area to consider this to be a potential third wave, fourth wave bottom, smaller picture, fifth wave. And then in the bigger picture, it will be an overall successfully completed first wave right here in this value area between the top and bottom extension. And then we come down, find support, solid second wave maxed out at 81.2. And now we can easily come up into this third wave. Although this second wave can unfold as a bigger picture, potentially you can say this an ABC or WXY pattern. It doesn't really matter. We're looking at 3 waves, right? So first wave down, second wave up. Right here, wick coming all the way up to 88.4. And then again, 88.4 fails to pass the 88.8 extension up here. So it's very important to consider this previous resistance that couldn't break in this spot right here either. That shows the bearish momentum that we could potentially be looking at. And then go ahead, finish this third wave down, which can extend the second wave a little bit deeper before we could potentially go up and complete this third wave. At that point, if we do extend this second wave lower, the third wave top will be a bit lower than this. The area will be brought down. But in order for that to happen, we want to see resistance break clearly. We want to see prices hold above this trend line right here in the premium section of the retracement area. Find, continue to stabilize, find some bullish momentum before we can potentially go higher. Until that happens, I'm going to stick with potential lower prices. I'm not going to be taking any long trades here until we have confirmation of price moving higher, mixing with the 120 moving average as well as RSI. So this is just first level confirmation before we complete it with indicators showing that, hey, there is enough bullish momentum. But until that happens, again, I'm looking for potential prices coming down to 79 to 80K. Is what that's what I'm personally looking for, again, due to a lot of the weakness that we've seen here. Price right here not being able to break past the 88.8K level. And then again, enough momentum to max out this retracement area. Price is couldn't hold above the trend line. So again, I'm looking for lower prices unless we get that confirmation right there. I will be personally taking some longs down at those levels I mentioned earlier. Until then, I'm waiting for that to happen or us to get confirmation. But I am short-term bearish at the moment. Overall, I am bullish throughout the rest of the year, though. So hopefully this video made sense, guys. Hopefully that everyone's staying patient and just not getting too ahead of ourselves until we have a clear setup. As of right now, I'm being patient for that lower, a little bit more of a price drop. Try to max out the R side down to a little bit more, pushing it down to 79 to 80K. And then I'm looking at taking some positions there. But yeah, guys, hope you enjoyed this video again, and take care.